He was born in chains, a nobody, a slave in the Roman Empire. His body could be broken, his freedom taken, but his mind, that no master could ever touch. And from that mind he built a power so great that emperors, soldiers, and leaders would one day study his words. This man's name was Epictetus, the philosopher who proved it doesn't matter where you start in life. What matters is how you respond. Because the truth is, we all carry chains. Chains of fear, chains of failure, chains of doubt. But like Epictetus, you can break them. And when you do, you'll discover a freedom no one can take away.
Epictetus did not enter this world with freedom. He was born into slavery, a child who carried the weight of chains before he could even walk. In the heart of the Roman Empire, a world of power, politics, and wealth, he was not seen as a person, but as property. His life was not his own. His future was already written by others. And yet, even in those beginnings of oppression and silence, something within him waited, a spark that no chains could touch.
Life as a Roman slave was brutal. Epictetus endured daily humiliation, orders barked without mercy, and punishments that left scars both seen and unseen. Some say his master once twisted his leg until it snapped, leaving him crippled for the rest of his life. For most, this would have been the end, a life condemned to suffering. But for Epictetus, pain became something else, not just an enemy, but a teacher.
In chains, surrounded by suffering, Epictetus discovered a radical truth. No matter what his master controlled, his labor, his movements, even his broken body, there was one thing that remained untouchable: his mind. They could chain his limbs, but not his thoughts. They could command his body, but not his spirit. This realization was the beginning of his freedom, a freedom not of the flesh, but of the soul.
Epictetus began to see that circumstances do not define a man. It is not where you begin, not the suffering you endure, not the injustice placed upon you, but how you respond. That response is what shapes your destiny. The world could crush his body, but it could not dictate his will.
Now think about it. You may not be a slave in ancient Rome, but what about today's chains? Losing your job, drowning in debt, fighting illness. The chains have changed, but the struggle is the same. And just like Epictetus, you have a choice. Let your circumstances control you, or rise above them.
Epictetus had every reason to surrender, every reason to give up on life. But instead, he began to rise. Slowly, painfully, but with unshakable determination. Because freedom was no longer something his master could grant or take away. Freedom was already his, in how he thought, how he acted, how he chose to live. And this was only the beginning of a journey that would turn a broken slave into a timeless sage.
Some slaves break under the weight of chains,
Epictetus chose a different path. Instead of bitterness, he chose wisdom. He began to listen, to watch, to study the words of philosophers who dared to question fate itself. In a world that tried to silence him, he started to think louder than ever before. Epictetus discovered a secret. You don't need to control the world to be free. Freedom is not about wealth, status, or power. It's about mastering yourself. They could command his labor. They could hurt his body. But his thoughts, his choices, those were his kingdom. And in that kingdom, he was untouchable. Day by day, he trained his mind. Every insult became a test, every hardship an opportunity. Instead of asking, "Why me?" he asked, "How can I use this?" Imagine if you did the same. Every setback, a lesson. Every failure, a stepping stone. Every pain, a forge that shapes you stronger. This was the resilience of Epictetus, the resilience you can claim today.
Think about it. How often do we blame our circumstances? The unfair boss, the failed relationship, the things we cannot control. Epictetus would tell you, those are not your chains. Your reaction to them is. The real prison is not out there. It's in here, your mind. Break those chains and nothing can hold you.
From the dirt of slavery, Epictetus began to rise, not because the world grew kinder, but because he grew stronger. He turned pain into wisdom. He turned chains into lessons. And he discovered a freedom no master could ever steal. But his journey was only beginning, because soon his words would echo beyond the walls of Rome and shape the minds of men for centuries to come.
Epictetus was no longer just a survivor. He was becoming a voice, a guide, a living example that even a man born in chains could rise to wisdom greater than kings. Students began to gather around him not for wealth, not for power, but for truth. For Epictetus, philosophy wasn't about dusty scrolls or endless debate. It was about living, about training the mind like a soldier trains his body. He told his students, "You may not control life, but you always control how you meet it." And they listened, because he didn't just preach it, he lived it. When a student complained about hardship, Epictetus asked, "Do you not realize you grow stronger every time you endure?" When someone feared loss, he said, "Remember, everything you love is borrowed. So cherish it fully before life takes it back." His words were not soft. They were sharp, cutting straight to the soul. And that's why they lasted. Now, think about your own life. When you scroll through endless bad news, when someone insults you, when you lose something you thought you couldn't live without, what if, like Epictetus, you treated every trial as training, every insult as noise, every loss as a reminder to value what remains? That shift alone could change everything. Epictetus had no wealth, no throne, no army, and yet he gained disciples who carried his wisdom across the empire.
from a broken slave to a sage whose words still guide us 2,000 years later. That is the true measure of greatness. But Epictetus's journey wasn't over, because his ideas would face the test of time and shape the very heart of Stoicism. Rome cast him out. The emperor feared the power of ideas, and Epictetus was sent into exile. But exile was no defeat, because wherever he went, he carried freedom within. A school rose in Nicopolis, not a palace of marble, but a place where words forged stronger weapons than swords.
Epictetus taught that true chains are not on the body, they are on the mind. You may not control the storm outside, he told his students, but you can master the calm within. A beggar disciplined in thought, he said, was freer than a king enslaved by rage.
His teachings did not stop at the poor or the broken. They reached the halls of power. One of his students carried his words to the throne itself, Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king of Rome. Think about it. A man born in slavery, once beaten and forgotten, shaped the mind of an emperor who ruled the known world. Epictetus never promised life without pain. He promised strength. He didn't say suffering disappears. He said suffering transforms into wisdom. His voice echoed through centuries. You are not what happens to you. You are how you respond. And what about us? We don't face emperors or exile, but we face rejection, failure, and storms of anxiety every day. Epictetus whispers across time, you are not your job. You are not your money. You are not what others say. You are your actions, your discipline, your choices.
Epictetus began his life in chains, but he ended it as one of the greatest teachers of freedom. His story is proof. No matter where you begin, your spirit can rise higher than your circumstances. The body may be bound, but the soul, if disciplined, is untouchable.
Epictetus's life was not just a story from ancient Rome. It is a mirror, reflecting the struggles we all face today. Chains may look different now, a toxic job, crushing debt, endless stress. But the answer remains the same. You cannot always control the world, but you can always control yourself. So the next time life pushes you down, remember Epictetus. Remember the man who rose from slavery to shape the mind of an emperor. If he could find freedom in the harshest chains, you can find peace in the chaos of our modern age. This is the power of Stoicism. Not just a theory, not just a dusty book, but a way of living. Calm, strong, unshakable. And if this story inspired you, don't let it end here. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs it. And in the comments, tell me, what's the first Stoic lesson you'll apply in your own life? Because wisdom only matters when it's lived.